did as well. And then that's when it just started getting out of control.
The father killed his wife and son and
A double murder-suicide. That's what the headline screamed. Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their 7-year-old son Daniel, gone. The official story? A murder-suicide inside Benoit's Georgia home. But was it really that simple? Or was something far darker, far more insidious at play? From the moment the news broke, the world was stunned. One of WWE's top stars, a man hailed as one of the greatest technical wrestlers of his generation, had suddenly become the center of the most horrifying tragedy in wrestling history. But here's the truth no one wants to talk about. The story you've been told may not be the full story. What happened inside that house on June 25th, 2007, was quickly wrapped up, handed to the press, and buried under a tidy label: double murder-suicide. The police moved fast. The media plastered the narrative everywhere, and WWE, a billion-dollar empire with everything to lose, polished it into their version of events. And just like that, the most shocking crime in wrestling history was sanitized for public consumption. Yet even a cursory glance at the reports raises serious questions. The investigation feels unfinished, rushed, almost suspiciously underexplained for something of this magnitude. June 22nd, at 8:30 a.m., Holly saw Chris drop Daniel off at a horseback riding camp, a place Daniel frequently attended during the week and which was located near Holly's home. She said Chris was driving erratically up the driveway when dropping Daniel off. However, her written statement differs slightly. Instead of driving recklessly up the driveway, Holly wrote that Chris stopped at the end of the driveway. While this may seem like a minor detail, it raises questions about the reliability of Schreppers' testimony. Later that same Friday, the Benoit family held a cookout at their home. Receipts from a grocery run at Publix on the 22nd were later found at the scene. One of the most significant alleged events comes from a statement by fellow wrestler and close friend of Chris, Chavo Guerrero. In an interview with WWE Magazine, Chavo claimed he'd been speaking with Chris on the phone Friday night. After about 45 minutes, Chris reportedly said someone was knocking at his door. Chavo said he then heard what sounded like a scuffle before the call abruptly cut off. Although there's no concrete evidence verifying this phone call or the article, on Saturday the 23rd, the day after the cookout, Chris told Chavo over the phone that the family had come down with food poisoning. On Saturday afternoon, around 4:00 p.m. An internet search was conducted from the Benoit residence. The search query was simply, Elijah. There are two prevailing theories about this. One suggests Chris was searching for Elijah the Prophet. The other posits he was looking for Elijah Burke, the last wrestler to face Chris before his death. This detail will become significant as we examine the crime scene more closely. Throughout that Saturday afternoon, Chris spoke on the phone with both neighbor Holly Schrepper and Chavo Guerrero. He told Holly that Daniel and Nancy had food poisoning, so Daniel wouldn't be attending riding camp. He told Chavo he'd overslept and missed a flight to a scheduled wrestling event. Holly noted that it was unusual for Chris to call her, though it wasn't uncommon for him to call Chavo. Chavo, however, recalled that Chris sounded groggy during their conversation. Call right back. Hey, Chavo. Garage door would be unlocked. Crucially, these same messages were sent from Nancy's phone. Alarmed by Chris's unusual behavior and his repeated claims that his family was sick, Chavo and Scott reported their concerns to WWE officials, who then requested a welfare check on the Benoit household. At approximately 2:30 p.m. On Monday, June 25, 2007, Officer Donna Mundy responded to the welfare check request at 130 Green Meadow Lane. According to the report, she was unable to enter the property because the dogs were loose, despite the text messages stating they'd be secured. Even more concerning, rather than calling for backup or a canine unit, the officers asked neighbor Holly Schrepper to enter the house first and contain the dogs herself. This decision not only endangered a civilian, but also compromised the integrity of the crime scene, setting the stage for what would become an alarmingly sloppy investigation. According to the police report, Holly entered the home, ran upstairs looking for Daniel, and quickly returned outside after discovering his body.
Okay, great. Say, okay, man. And he goes, Chavo. Chavo. I go, yeah? And he goes, I love you. And I'm like, okay, brother, I got.
Nancy, reportedly the first to be killed before Daniel and Chris, was found in an upstairs bedroom beside a pillow and a Bible. Her hands had been bound together with a coaxial cable wrapped tightly around her throat, and her feet were bound with black tape found in the home. Investigators theorized, based on the level of decomposition, that Nancy must have died on Friday, June 22nd. However, they failed to account for a critical detail. The room where her body was found was unusually warm, 82 degrees Fahrenheit, which could have accelerated decomposition, suggesting she may have died significantly later than initially believed. Daniel was found in his room, lying in a sleeping position in his bed. His room was cooler than which was included in the police report, though its significance was never explained. Chris was discovered in a downstairs room, also bound and also deceased. The medical examiner determined he died from blunt force trauma to the head, likely inflicted by a dumbbell, which was found at the scene. While the official ruling was murder-suicide, numerous unanswered questions and inconsistencies continue to fuel speculation about what truly occurred in the Benoit home. And remember, the details keep accumulating, forming a swirling vortex of questions and contradictions. It's not merely about what happened, but why so many things went wrong, why evidence was mishandled, and why so many inconsistencies persist. The police report itself became a document of confusion, a testament to a deeply flawed investigation. Consider the seemingly minor detail about the dogs. A text message indicated they were secured, yet officers found them loose, a critical breach of protocol. The decision to have a neighbor, Holly Schrepper, enter the house first and confirmed her preparations, but no DNA testing was performed on the empty containers. Why not? What were they trying to hide? The presence of steroids and painkillers prescribed to Nancy further complicates the picture. Though these substances weren't found in Chris's system, they add another piece to a puzzle that stubbornly refuses to fit together. The makeshift gag, a bloody sock with hair stuck to it, found in the trash reveals a disturbing element of violence and restraint. DNA confirmed it had been used on Nancy, yet Chris's DNA was notably absent. This strongly suggests someone else was involved, someone who restrained Nancy and then concealed their presence. The seemingly innocuous knife found under Daniel's bed, clean and unused, raises further questions. Why was it there? And why did investigators wait a full week before collecting it, leaving it vulnerable to tampering? The contents of Nancy's safety deposit box included photographs showing injuries to her face, painting a picture of a woman who had suffered violence in the past. Investigators dismissed these injuries as unrelated to Chris and Sandra Topolini, Nancy's friend and sister, respectively, reveals a pattern of marital strife, arguments over money and insurance, and rumors of infidelity. Nancy's fear of Chris's infidelity, coupled with the discovery of second, burner phone at the scene, paints a portrait of a woman living in constant...
It was a particularly brutal and vicious murder. It was something that showed some sign of real rage.
Chris was just this gentle...
As it often does, the internet became a breeding ground for speculation and conspiracy theories. One of the most persistent theories centered on Kevin Sullivan, Chris's former friend and a veteran wrestler. Kevin and Nancy shared a complicated history. They had been married and were once part of WCW's Dungeon of Doom faction. Kevin's background as a satanic performer, combined with the religious themes present throughout the case, lent this theory a disturbing resonance. The timeline: murders occurring roughly 10 years after Kevin and Nancy's divorce, further fueled speculation. Chavo's account of hearing a knock at the door followed by an audible scuffle lends credence to the possibility that someone entered the home, perhaps unwelcome. The absence of forced entry suggests the perpetrator was either known to the family or had assistance from someone who was. The significance of that knock on the door cannot be overstated. It implies an element of infidelity, financial hardship, and a tangled web of secrets that ultimately culminated in an unimaginable tragedy. While the official ruling of murder-suicide may offer a sense of closure for some, the lingering questions and inconsistencies demand deeper investigation. The sheer number of anomalies casts serious doubt on the thoroughness and integrity of the original inquiry. The notion that Kevin Sullivan might be involved is deeply disturbing, and although the evidence remains circumstantial, the pieces fit together in an eerily coherent pattern. From a knock on the door to the suspiciously coincidental timeline, the connections are undeniably present. The family's ties to professional wrestling, a world often cloaked in secrecy and intrigue, further complicate matters. The religious motifs, the satanic undertones, they all contribute to a narrative that is both compelling and horrifying. This is a story that challenges our grasp of reality, forcing us to confront the darkness that can fester beneath the surface of even the most outwardly ordinary lives. The chilling realization that all these bizarre details can coalesce into a coherent explanation is deeply unsettling. And so, we've circled back to the core of this case, Chris Benoit's mental state. It's easy to get lost in theories, conspiracies, and WWE's efforts to control the narrative, but the fundamental truth remains. A man suffering from CTE is not himself. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy is a degenerative brain disease, and its effects are insidious. This isn't merely about forgetting where you left your keys. It's about the gradual erosion of personality, impulse control, and rational thought. Imagine a slow-motion unraveling of everything that defines who you are. We're talking about a man who, according to Sandra, began taking increasingly strange routes, driven by a primal fear of being followed. That level of paranoia isn't a rational reaction to everyday life. It's a symptom of a mind struggling to process reality. And then there are Nancy's texts, those heartbreaking glimpses into their crumbling marriage. "I'm tired of your recent behavior," she wrote. It wasn't a dramatic accusation, but rather a weary resignation to a problem she felt powerless to fix. Her words suggest a steady decline, a gradual shift in Chris's personality that was driving a wedge between them, breeding distance and resentment. Let's reconsider the physical evidence, the Bibles found at the scene. Initially dismissed as a bizarre, almost theatrical gesture, they take on new meaning in light of possible CT-induced psychosis. Perhaps they weren't a mocking display of faith, but rather the desperate grasping of someone clinging to something familiar as his mind slipped away. Maybe, in a moment of profound disorientation, Chris was seeking solace in something he once knew, only to be overwhelmed by the chaos raging inside his own head. The same might be said of the seemingly random internet searches, like the one for the prophet Elijah. The biblical story of Elijah resurrecting the widow's son is one of hope and divine intervention. But in the context of the Benoit tragedy, it becomes tragically ironic, a sickening parody of what Chris may have been desperately seeking, a way to undo the irreversible. Then there's WWE's immediate response. Their swift erasure of Chris Benoit from company history, along with their bizarre attempts to vilify him as a monster, reads like textbook damage control, a corporation in its power to deflect blame. They want a clear-cut villain, someone whose actions were purely evil, rather than acknowledging a man ravaged by a devastating medical condition. But that narrative doesn't withstand scrutiny. It's too simplistic, too convenient. It ignores the overwhelming evidence pointing to a man whose mind...
And it was from Chris's phone. And it said, "The dogs are in the enclosed pool area." And
Particularly troubling are the claims made by Matthew Greenberg, the individual who updated the Wikipedia page with details of Nancy's death hours before the information was publicly released. How did he obtain that information so quickly? And what was his connection to WWE? The fact that he lived just a minute away from their headquarters only deepens the mystery. The chat logs from June 24th, showing users speculating that Chris was responsible, suggest a coordinated effort to shape public perception, to preempt any narrative that might portray Chris as anything other than a cold-blooded murderer. This raises a disturbing question. Did someone within WWE have prior knowledge of the events? And if so, what was their motive? Was it merely to protect the company's image? Or was something far more sinister at play? The autopsy's confirmation of CTE further complicates the picture. It's a critical piece of evidence that cannot be ignored. It offers a plausible explanation for Chris's erratic behavior, escalating paranoia, and violent outbursts. It suggests his actions may not have stemmed from malice, but from the tragic consequences of a debilitating neurological disease. This, in turn, raises serious questions about WWE's responsibility to safeguard the health and well-being of its performers. Wrestlers routinely endure brutal physical punishment, absorbing countless blows to the head. Should the company have enforced support? These are questions that demand answers. Sandra's chilling assertion that Chris totally blacked out points to a complete loss of awareness, a temporary disconnection from reality. This aligns with known CTE symptoms, episodes of confusion, disorientation, and even transient amnesia. It offers a horrifying explanation for how a man could commit unspeakable acts and retain no memory of them. It's a truly terrifying possibility. It's also crucial to remember the immense pressure that professional wrestlers endure. They are entertainers, yes, but they are also athletes, performing under an unrelenting spotlight and expected to deliver electrifying performances night after night. The constant travel, the grueling schedule, the physical toll, it all contributes to a stressful and often isolating existence. It's a world where the boundaries between performance and reality can blur, where the pressure to maintain a larger-than-life persona can exact a heavy price on mental health. Unanswered questions linger. Why was some of the evidence never tested for DNA? What exactly transpired during that final, horrifying phone call with Chavo? And who was responsible for the injuries visible on Nancy in those disturbing photographs? These are questions that deserve answers, not only to bring closure to the families involved, but also to expose the darker undercurrents of the professional wrestling industry. Perhaps the most crucial lesson from the Benoit tragedy is the importance of critical thinking. It's easy to you called it a window into a mind unraveling. This isn't about sensationalism, it's about understanding. If authentic, this footage could offer critical insight into Chris Benoit's mental state in the hours before the tragedy. It might provide tangible evidence supporting the theory that his actions were not driven solely by malice, but were the horrifying consequence of a deteriorating neurological condition. CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma, is increasingly suspected to have played a significant role in Benoit's behavior. The impact sustained over a career in professional wrestling, the piledrivers, suplexes, and relentless slams, undoubtedly took a severe toll on his brain. This is a harsh reality of the industry, often ignored in the pursuit of entertainment. The timing of this footage's release is significant. It arrives amid growing calls for enhanced athlete safety and better mental health support within WWE. For years, critics have pointed to the company's inadequate protocols for protecting wrestlers from the physical and psychological hazards of their profession. The Benoit tragedy served as a grim wake-up call, but meaningful change has been slow to follow. Wrestlers continue to absorb punishing blows night after night, often with minimal protection and insufficient medical oversight. The pressure to perform, to entertain, to endure frequently outweighs concerns for long-term health and well-being. This new footage intensifies scrutiny of WWE's potential culpability. Did the company have a duty to recognize and address Chris Benoit's declining mental health? Were warning signs overlooked or dismissed? Did WWE prioritize entertainment over the welfare of its performers? The company has consistently claimed it was unaware of the severity of Benoit's struggles, but the emergence of this footage is likely to reignite public debate and invite renewed legal examination. It's vital to remember the immense pressure professional wrestlers face. They are expected to embody larger-than-life figures, projecting strength, charisma, and athleticism at all times. The demands are relentless, the schedule punishing, and the scrutiny unyielding. Constant travel, grueling performances, and the isolation inherent in their lifestyle. Life on the road can take a significant toll on mental health. The boundaries between performance and reality often blur, and the pressure to maintain a public persona can become overwhelming. For someone like Chris Benoit, a performer renowned for his intensity and dedication, the pressure to consistently deliver might have been especially debilitating. The unanswered questions surrounding the Benoit tragedy remain deeply troubling. Why was some of the evidence never tested for DNA? What exactly transpired during that final? It's all too easy to accept official narratives at face value, especially when they come from authority figures or individuals with vested interests. However, it is essential to question those narratives, scrutinize the evidence with discernment, and be willing to challenge conventional wisdom. In this case, official reports were riddled with inconsistencies and omissions, suggesting a deliberate effort to obscure the truth. This serves as a stark reminder that we must remain vigilant and never blindly trust those in positions of power. The new footage reinforces this imperative, urging us to closely examine the available evidence and draw our own informed conclusions. The human cost of this tragedy extends far beyond the immediate families involved. It represents a profound loss for the entire wrestling community and a lasting stain on the industry's reputation. It stands as a painful reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the devastating consequences of unrelenting pressure coupled with inadequate mental health support. This new footage should not be viewed merely as a spectacle for consumption. Rather, it must serve as a catalyst for change, a call for greater transparency, accountability, and systemic reform. It offers an opportunity to learn from past failures and to build a safer, more supportive environment for professional wrestlers. Ultimately, the legacy of Chris Benoit's tragedy should be one of heightened awareness, compassion, and a steadfast commitment to safeguarding the well-being of athletes. This moment demands deep reflection, compelling us to confront the uncomfortable realities of professional wrestling and to strive for a future where performers' health and safety are prioritized above all else. The new footage underscores the urgency of this mission, prompting each of us to ask, what can we do to ensure such a tragedy never happens again? It's a difficult question, but one we must answer if we genuinely value the lives